Welcome to the Connected Teamwork Summit. I'm one of your co-hosts, Hylke Faber, and I'm so grateful to be here today with you and tomorrow in the Connected Teamwork Summit, where we're going to look at how do we build connectedness in our teams and in our lives in every moment, and how do we do this? And we're going to learn from different stories, different speakers, from all of the participants, from each other, and we'll do this online. It's the first time we're doing this. I admit to feeling both grateful and inspired, and also a tad like a little anticipation and excitement, and maybe some butterflies about how we're going to do this. And as we get into this, I invite you to take your seat as we go into this 2 day conversation and contemplation about connectedness, about what it means to be truly connected to our true selves, to each other, and to our purpose. And this is not just an academic exercise, even though I love academics. This is going to be a practice together of 2 days where we'll look at each other and look at ourselves and say, what can I learn about being more connected to myself, to each other, and to my purpose? And we'll hear lots of stories. And I thought today I'll start with a story from my life and take you a little bit through my life about how I felt called, you could say, to sit here with you today and talk about connectedness. As you know, I'm a coach and a team facilitator, a writer, and I didn't start there. We all start as babies, and I grew up as a little person in the Netherlands, in the north of the Netherlands, on a farm. And I learned something about connectedness there because I love being in the fields and seeing the nature and the big expanses and the lighthouses that we could see from the window from our living room, and feeling part of something bigger. I didn't have words for it, but I remember standing in front of that big window we had in the living room and looking out over the fields and feeling a sense of peace and sense of at home. I felt at home. And I also felt that when I was sitting in church, I would listen to the organ. And in the Netherlands, they have these beautiful old churches from, I think our village church, first stone might have been laid in 1,000 or something like 1,000 years ago. And I would listen to this big church organ and just feel overcome by a sense of awe, a sense of peace, a sense of joy. Again, I didn't have words for it. I just felt very much at home. I felt connected, and I didn't have words for it. I started playing some music myself and also loved that experience. And then I also started having some experiences of being disconnected. And as I tell my story, I invite you to reflect on your own story. Maybe think about my story as a background for your own story. That is what I invite you to do these whole 2 days. This conference be a background to the foreground of you, and be an exploration of yourself. Like, how can I connect deeply to myself? What's going on with my life? How do I connect more deeply? How do I get disconnected sometimes? And I got disconnected. I'll let myself be disconnected unconsciously, you could say, many times. I love music, but because I wasn't quite clear about how I was going to make a living with that, I didn't go to the conservatory. I actually started to go to business school and ended up as a strategy consultant in New York City for quite a long time. And life doesn't seem to have us like be wrong. It was actually a great experience. I loved being a strategy consultant, and I learned something about connectedness there as well, which was, how do I truly give myself to very complex problems? And then insights started flowing in our teams and working together, and I found this very meaningful. I remember creating charts for clients where we were able to map how a market was working, and just seeing this the synthesis of things come together. I felt very connected. I felt very energized and inspired, and that's something that stayed with me. I also felt increasingly disconnected, and that was during my 20s and 30s. So much so that I felt quite, you could say, unhinged. My relationship didn't quite work. I had health challenges. I had really intense insomnia and sometimes wouldn't sleep at all for a week. And I don't know if any of you have had insomnia, but it's a debilitating experience. Like, and at some point during that time, something in me said, something got to change. And I met meditation. And what I found in meditation was what I had found also as a little boy standing in front of that window, in our farm window, which was this sense of peace and compassion and love and meaning that I adored. And I was so grateful that I found a technique to access that, to where I wasn't just at the whim of how I was feeling or what my mind was doing or what I was reading or what is it, whether life was going well or not going well. I was finding a way to actually put myself in my seat and initially use the breath as a way into feeling more connected. I became so excited about it. I have a bit of an A-type personality that I almost became a monk. Uh, and at some point decided not to do that, but instead focus my life energies on coaching and team and culture development, which I've been doing for the last 20 years. And of course, the story is never complete, because also during that journey, I discovered a lot more about connectedness. I felt, and disconnectedness. I felt so inspired when I would work with people and have them sit up almost taller in their seat through the conversations they were having with each other, or the introspection that was happening, simply asking questions or thinking about questions. Think about a person that you admire, and something in the person would light up. Think about a person that you admire. Maybe do that right now. Think about a person that you admire. It's one of my favorite questions to get to a greater sense of connectedness to something more meaningful. A person that I admire, and I've used her name so many times. She's no longer amongst the living. Her name is Jean White. She was the president of the Global Child Nutrition Foundation until she was, I think, about 96. She started about 20 odd years before. And I met her in her 90s, and she had more energy than anybody else that I knew at that time. And what I found from her, she was always saying, if there's not a way through this way, we have to go another way. And there's so many different ways. So many different ways that are ways to connect with what's going on and what's happening. And I found that I felt so focused, so excited that through meditation I could find a conscious way in, and then through coaching, and I could see that people were starting to actually light up on the inside. Light up on the inside. And then again, I experienced disconnection. I got very focused on results. My achievement drive was very strong, and I became too focused, you could say, on the work, and lost my balance again. And so I think this journey of connectedness is an ongoing journey that we keep falling out of, and then we fall into it again. So my question to you in these next 2 days, is to think about, how do I connect to myself? How do I connect to myself? How do I stay connected to myself and to my team? And what happens when I fall back? How do we get to the topic of connected teamwork? Well, we didn't call this work connectedness during the first 16, 17 years of working. When I was at the beginning of the pandemic, I was sitting down, and suddenly I wasn't traveling as much anymore. I wasn't moving around as much, and I had much more time to reflect. And I thought, I'm almost 50. What do I want this life to be about? What do I want my gifts to be about? How do I want to be of service? And when I looked back, what I thought was a big thing of this was, how do people connect? That seemed to be like a red thread through everything that we were doing. Connectedness seemed to be a word that encapsulated a lot of the work that we've been doing. And I also started looking around, and I started seeing that the world has so much division. And I wondered what would happen if we as people become more connected, uh, even with people who are different from us. I got to practice this during the election season. When people put the signs in their lawn which are different from mine, how do I stay connected to them? How do I stay connected to team members that are different from me? And then why did we focus on teamwork? Well, I like to use the word team in the broadest possible sense. Team is to me something that's not only at work with the people that I work with, but it's also about the people that I interact with, maybe my clients or my partners or my family members, or anybody that I'm in some kind of collaboration with. And why did we focus on connected teamwork is because we felt that, well, if we want to develop this muscle of connectedness, then it's good to have a playground, a place to practice that in. And where do most people experience connectedness and disconnectedness? Well, it's actually a lot at work in the team. So we start to say, well, we need to focus this work on connected teamwork, helping teams thrive by being more connected with each other, helping teams thrive by being more connected with each other, helping them understand how to actually access the deeper meaning. Now, what is connectedness, you could ask? What are we talking about? Well, I think many of us have been exposed to IQ and EQ, which are about thoughts and about feelings. Connectedness goes to something a little deeper. It goes to the level of, you could call it presence, the soul, what lies beyond that, what is always. And I'm using words to point to something that is very personal and can be different for everyone. In a teamwork setting, we might talk about it as like, how do you stay connected to your values? How do you connect to each other with empathy? How do you stay focused on your purpose? And along the way, as we thought about this, we felt that maybe besides IQ and EQ, there's a third component, which is CQ, connectedness quotient, that we want to look at as a core orientation for life and for leadership. So that's a little bit about the why of this summit and why I talk about connected teamwork. Now, if you're anything like me, life happens, and we may not always feel connected. Actually, in these online experiences, I have experiences all the time where I get messages that things are not working or things are working well, and part of my brain goes on a little side excursion. And we probably have all had these experiences. The question is, how do I come back? How do I come back to what's most important to me? How do I come back to what I truly want to connect to? What's most important to me? I think that question, what is most important to us, is such an important one because it helps us to orient to spending our most precious assets the way we might want to. We can so easily get lost in all the machinations of our minds and go on like this problem and that problem and stressed out about that and that judgment and so on, as opposed to staying focused on what we truly want to be connected to. So in this summit, we will look at connectedness by saying, well, how does a team's connectedness work in different situations? It's easy maybe to connect in fair weather moments when things are going well, we're just getting to know each other. It might be fun and easy, and there's a sense of connection with each other that is natural, it flows. We call those the white belt moments, and we've defined 4 of them: appreciation and play, getting to know each other, goal setting, and also this sense of serving together, being of service to something bigger. And then we're going to continue with a little bit more difficult moments, like how do you connect as a team when things get a little tougher, So how do you connect as a team when things are harder, like when you have to take a step back. I want to take a step back and say, what are the patterns that are no longer working? What are the patterns that we might want to change? And it's a time for group reflection and learning, and that creates, of course, requires safety. And then we might get to places where we have to make decisions, and that causes all kinds of other reflection and intentionality that we need to have to stay. How do I stay connected with each other, especially if I want to make a decision that's not popular? How do I do this? So team environments create all kinds of situations where we get to figure out how to bring our best self, what's most important to us. How do we bring that to the fore? And how do we stay connected to the other person and to our purpose? And then there's this team defining moment, this moment that's get a little harder, which may be about managing commitments. What do we do when a person we work with doesn't do what we want them to do? How do we hold them accountable? How do we hold ourselves accountable? How do we make amends when we miss out on our agreements? How do we do this? And then even harder, maybe giving feedback and coaching. Like, how do we give feedback to somebody on their behavior and something we want to change? So these moments that we just talked about, this group reflection, decision making, commitments management, and feedback and coaching, we call those not the white belt but the blue belt moments. And then there's the black belt moments, the harder ones that we might have greatest trouble staying connected, because our reptilian brain that causes our fight, flight, freeze reaction gets very active. It's like, no, you got to fix this now. This is a big problem, right? So we might get to the black belt moments of there may be setbacks. There might be setbacks and stretches, and we're going to hear about that tomorrow. We're going to talk about undiscussables and conflict. Like, what happens when we need to talk about stuff that's really hard? What happens when there's hurt, when people are hurt? And we as humans tend to hurt each other all the time, whether we know it or not, and we hurt ourselves, at least I do, with judgmental thinking all the time. So how do we work with those moments? And then endings and departures, like how do we work with when people are about to leave the team? So all of these are like moments. These last four moments, we can call them black belt moments, where we get invited to take our seat more deeply and say, okay, how am I going to respond to this moment? How am I going to respond to this moment in the best possible way? How am I going to respond to this moment in the best possible way? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? And how I do this together? And how do I do this staying purposeful? How do I do this staying purposeful? Three elements of what we call connectedness quotient, CQ. Staying connected to ourselves, staying connected to each other, and staying connected to our purpose. Simply remembered as I, myself, we, relationships, and it. How do I do this? And that's what we'll be exploring during those 2 days. And it's not going to be myself or my co-host Carson Heddy, who I'll introduce in a little bit, who's going to be speaking to you. It's going to be 12 people, 12 speakers, 12 leaders from all walks of life, who are going to share with you their perspective on how you build connectedness in each of those moments, the white belt moments, the blue belt moments, and the black belt moments. How do you do that during each of those 12 team defining moments? So then there's a question. Are there some principles? Like, that's a lot. That's a lot. Are there some principles that we can practice to be more connected? And can we be aware of some patterns that disconnect us? And having thought about this for the last few years, we saw that there are three orientations that we find helpful to remind ourselves to come back to connection. And that's truth, 1, love, 2, and service, 3. Truth being about being in truth, being present here, being the deep truth that we are, which includes being present, being connected to our values, coming from our highest self, being honest, for example. Love, Such an odd thing to say at work. Maybe love having to do with how can I have the best interest of others in mind? How can I empathize? How can I extend myself with warmth, care, and compassion? How can I do that? How can I stay loving and caring and compassionate towards myself in this journey? And then purpose, uh, service, service. How do I, in these moments, how can I put myself in service? How can I help others without maybe rescuing them? So truth, love, and service. And we'll explore those principles throughout those 2 days in the Connected Teamwork Summit on those 12 team defining moments. And also, we're going to discover or maybe play with some of these disconnectors that we found. And those, I like to call them obsession, judgment, and control. We get disconnected when our mind goes like in a corner and it becomes all obsessed about things having to go a certain way. Judgment, when I start to judge the other for whatever thing, and our minds are so good at that. And then control, trying to force and fix solutions. I'm also very good at that. My mind is very good at that. So we can notice these disconnectors of obsession, judgment, and control, and let them go when we notice them. Be compassionate with ourselves, and then come back to truth, love, and service to connect more deeply to this moment. Now, these are just some pointers. I'm sure that all of us listening and all of us speaking later have their own views of how do you stay connected? How do you stay connected to yourself, each other, and to your purpose? There's something that somebody told me. It says, a mind is like a dangerous neighborhood. It's better not to go there by yourself. I love that we are here together. We can learn from each other. We probably all have those 3 a.m. wake up moments where our mind goes all kinds of directions. One of the great things about being in community for me is that I get to share and learn from others. So my invitation to you in participating in this summit is to share experiences in the chat functions that in the platforms that you're participating on, and on LinkedIn, maybe elsewhere. That you maybe share on LinkedIn also in the chat insights that you hear. It's like, yeah, this is what this person said. I want to share that because that might be a way for myself and other people around me to get more connected to what's true, to what's important, to each other, and to our purpose. And I also invite you to take the time to sit with yourself, because when people in Greece went to the oracle in Delphi, they went there with all kinds of problems, like my neighbor is not doing this, and this land dispute and this marital thing, and they were hoping that the oracle was giving them the answer. Well, guess what? What did it say in the on top of the gate in Delphi? It says, know thyself. So I invite you to experience this whole summit as the background, where you are the foreground, every single person, whether you listen to it now live or whether you listen to a recording later. You are the foreground. Everything else is the background, not from an ego perspective, but from an attention perspective. Allow yourself, for how you participate in this summit, to be with yourself as you listen to this. Some things you may resonate with, other things you may not resonate with, and that's fine. Trust your own guidance. Trust that what you need to say, what you need to learn, you will learn. And you might not even learn it by what's said, but simply with an insight that you've had. And if you want to share that in the chat, that's great too. So why do this summit? I see the world around me and I see so much disconnection. so much judgment, so much division, so much not using the full potential of our intelligence. And I would like to make my contribution to helping to evolve us to another level where we are more wise, more compassionate, more purposeful, more joyful, more peaceful. We may not solve, probably will not solve all the challenges of our generation. But maybe, I hold this out as a possibility. Maybe if we get a bit more connected to ourselves, just a little bit more. And this is not like a black and white thing. Now be more connected. No, a little bit more connected. Just a little bit. Bring it in a little bit. You may feel taller on the inside. I feel more loving, more kind, more gentle. And paradoxically, life doesn't become so much about Hylke. It becomes about all of us.